perfect calculation, the ethereal collective had achieved something no other civilization in galactic history had managed: perfect peace through perfect prediction. For 8,000 years, their vast network of quantum computers, known as the Nexus Protocol, had calculated every possible outcome of every decision made by every species in their domain. Wars were prevented before the first shot was fired. Economic collapses were avoided through carefully timed interventions. Even natural disasters were managed through precisely coordinated evacuations and resource deployments. Prime Architect Zelian stood in the central chamber of the Nexus core, watching streams of data flow like liquid light through crystalline processors. Each pulse represented thousands of calculations, each pattern a prediction of future events across 17 star systems. The collective's success was built on this foundation of absolute certainty. They had learned to read the universe like a book, understanding that every action had a predictable reaction. Every choice led to a calculable outcome. The morning analysis is complete, Prime Architect announced data synthesizer Korth, his tall, pale form materializing beside Zelian through the chamber's holographic interface. 17 probability matrices updated, 43 minor interventions scheduled, and 0 anomalies detected. Zelian nodded with satisfaction. 0 anomalies. It had been decades since the Nexus had encountered anything truly unexpected. The galaxy had been mapped, categorized, and predicted into submission. Every species followed patterns that the collective had long ago decoded. The warlike Kryn could be pacified through calculated shows of force. The merchant Vellani responded, predictably, to economic incentives. Even the chaotic Zephyrians followed patterns once their cultural algorithms were properly understood. The first glitch, the alarm that shattered the morning calm, was so unusual that Korth initially assumed it was a system malfunction. The Nexus Protocol had just registered what appeared to be an impossibility, a complete predictive failure. Display the anomaly, Zelian commanded, his usual composure cracking slightly. The chamber filled with a three-dimensional map of the galaxy's outer rim. A small red indicator pulsed near the edge of collective space, marking the location of what appeared to be a previously unknown vessel. But that wasn't the concerning part. The Nexus had encountered unknown ships before and had always successfully calculated their likely origins, destinations, and intentions within microseconds. This time, the analysis simply read, ERROR, Bearbural Pattern Unrecognized. Run the analysis again, Zelian ordered. I have run it 47 times, Korth replied, his voice carrying an unfamiliar note of uncertainty. The result is consistent. The Nexus cannot predict the behavior of this vessel or its occupants. The ship in question was crewed by collective standards, assembled from what appeared to be salvaged components and held together with primitive welding techniques. Its propulsion system was chemical-based. Its hull showed signs of repeated repairs, and its communication array was broadcasting on frequencies that no advanced civilization had used for millennia. But it was moving with purpose, following a trajectory that the Nexus calculated as both inefficient and impossible to maintain with the visible fuel reserves. Moreover, when the collective's automated border stations had requested identification, the response had been cheerful, direct, and completely unprecedented. This is Captain Maria Santos of the Earth vessel Resilience. The transmission had said, We're explorers from the Sol system, looking to make some new friends and maybe trade for supplies. We've got some interesting stories to share if you're interested. The Nexus had immediately begun analyzing the transmission for hidden meanings. threat assessments, and cultural indicators. The result was the same: error behavioral pattern unrecognized. The humans arrived. Captain Maria Santos had spent 3 years in deep space, but nothing had prepared her for the sight of Station Harmony. The collective's border facility hung in space like a perfect geometric sculpture, its surfaces reflecting starlight in mathematically precise patterns. Everything about it spoke of advanced civilization, careful planning, and resources beyond imagination. "It's beautiful," whispered Dr. James Chan, the expedition's chief scientist, as he pressed his face against the observation port. "Look at those structural algorithms. They've achieved perfect material efficiency." Maria nodded, but her attention was focused on the dozen sleek vessels that had surrounded the Resilience shortly after their arrival. They moved with fluid precision, maintaining exact distances and angles that spoke of either incredibly advanced autopilot systems or pilots with superhuman coordination skills. "Captain Santos," came a voice through the communication system, speaking English with an accent that sounded almost musical. "I am Station Coordinator Vex. We have prepared Docking Bay 7 for your arrival. Please proceed at precisely 42 meters per second and maintain your current trajectory." "Copy that, Coordinator Vex," Maria replied. "Though I should mention, our navigation systems aren't quite that precise. We'll do our best to get close." There was a pause. Then, "Please clarify. Your vessel's guidance systems cannot maintain 42 meters per second velocity." "Well, we can try," Maria said, with a grin that Vex couldn't see. "But knowing my crew, we'll probably end up somewhere between 38 and 46 meters per second. Hope that's okay." Another pause, longer this time. "Please, ... try to get close." "That's the plan," Maria confirmed cheerfully. The docking process should have been a disaster. The Resilience approached the station at what the Nexus calculated as dangerously variable speeds, made 3 unnecessary course corrections, and came to a stop approximately 2 meters from the designated position rather than the expected precise alignment, yet somehow the docking clamps engaged successfully. The airlock sealed properly. The human crew disembarked safely. Station Coordinator Vex stood in the reception area, watching as the human delegation approached. They moved with none of the calculated precision he expected from representatives of an advanced civilization. Their leader, Captain Santos, walked with a relaxed gait that seemed to change rhythm unpredictably. Dr. Chen kept pausing to examine wall panels and structural elements with obvious curiosity rather than following the efficient path to the meeting room. Most disturbing of all, when Vex had mentally queried the Nexus protocol for behavioral predictions about the approaching humans, the system had responded with the same impossible message: error behavioral pattern unrecognized. "Welcome to Station Harmony," Vex said, gesturing toward the prepared meeting room. "We have arranged accommodations according to standard diplomatic protocols." "That's very kind of you," Captain Santos replied. "Though I hope you don't mind if we're a bit flexible about the formal stuff. We're more interested in getting to know you as people." People. The term didn't translate well into collective concepts. Vex understood individuals, citizens, and functional units, but people implied something more personal, more unpredictable. "Perhaps we should begin with information exchange," Vex suggested. "The Nexus protocol has prepared a comprehensive analysis of optimal trade arrangements, cultural exchange parameters, and diplomatic frameworks." Dr. Chen looked up from his examination of a decorative wall crystal. "That sounds fascinating, but first, could you tell us about yourselves? What do you value? What makes you happy? What are your dreams? The question struck Vex as oddly personal and completely irrelevant to diplomatic proceedings. The Nexus Protocol had no prepared responses for inquiries about happiness or dreams. Those concepts were too subjective, too variable, too human. The impossible decision over the following hours. The collective's representatives found themselves in increasingly unfamiliar territory. The humans asked questions that had no optimal answers. They made decisions based on what they called gut feelings and instincts. They seemed genuinely interested in learning about collective culture, not for strategic advantage, but out of simple curiosity. Asterisk. When presented with the Nexus Protocol's carefully calculated trade proposals, Captain Santos had read through them, nodded appreciatively, and then said, "These are very thorough, but they feel a bit cold. How about we start with something simple? We'll share some of our music and stories, you share some of yours, and we'll see what happens naturally." "What happens naturally?" Vex had repeated, as if the phrase were in a foreign language. "You know," Dr. Chen had added with a smile, "we'll just see where the conversation leads us. Maybe we'll find something unexpected." The Nexus Protocol had never encountered a civilization that actively sought the unexpected. Every successful species in galactic history had eventually learned to minimize unpredictability, to optimize outcomes, to calculate advantages. The humans seemed to be doing the opposite. The spreading anomalous word of the human contact spread through collective space. The Nexus Protocol began registering increasingly frequent anomalies. Other species, inspired by the humans' unconventional approach, began deviating from their predicted behavioral patterns. The Kryn started experimenting with diplomatic solutions they had never attempted before. The Villani began making trade decisions based on factors the Nexus couldn't quantify. Most disturbing of all, some collective citizens began questioning whether perfect predictability was truly perfect progress. Data synthesizer. Korth reported the situation to Prime Architect Zelian with growing concern. "The anomalies are spreading, Prime Architect. The humans have introduced a variable that our calculations cannot account for." "And what variable is that?" Zelian asked. "Hope," Korth replied. "They make decisions based on hope rather than probability. They choose actions that might lead to better outcomes rather than actions that will definitely lead to acceptable outcomes. The Nexus Protocol cannot calculate hope." Zelian stared at the data streams flowing through the chamber, watching as more and more error messages appeared among the previously perfect predictions. For the first time in 8,000 years, the collective faced a future they could not foresee, and somehow that possibility was both terrifying and oddly exhilarating. Asterisk, the ancient threat there. Crisis began with a single quantum signature detected. In the Andros system, where the collective had established their largest research facility, deep space sensors registered an energy pattern that matched nothing in their extensive databases, moving with purpose through the outer asteroid fields. Within hours, the source revealed itself, a massive automated defense platform, clearly of ancient origin, emerging from what appeared to be a millennia stealth field. The construct was larger than most space stations, bristling with weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. "Analysis complete," Data Synthesizer Korth reported. To the Emergency Council session, the platform appears to be a relic from the predecessor war, 12,000 years ago. It's been dormant until now, but something has triggered its activation protocols. Prime Architect Zelian studied the tactical display with growing alarm. What are its capabilities? The Nexus protocol calculates that it possesses sufficient firepower to sterilize the entire Andros system within 6 hours. Worse, preliminary scans suggest it's not alone. We're detecting similar quantum signatures in 7 other systems, all beginning to emerge from long-term concealment. The implications were staggering. The predecessors had been the galaxy's previous dominant civilization, destroyed in a war, so devastating that it had reset galactic development by thousands of years. Their automated defense systems had been thought completely eliminated. Response options, Zelian asked. The Nexus has calculated 43 possible approaches, Korth replied. The highest probability of success is 0.3%, achieved through a coordinated assault using our entire fleet. Estimated casualties, 67% of collective forces. The human perspective, Captain Maria. Santos received the emergency communication while the Resilience was docked at Station Harmony. The message was brief but urgent. Ancient weapons were threatening multiple systems, and the collective was requesting all available assistance. What do you think? She asked Dr. Chen as they reviewed the tactical data the collective had shared. Honestly, I think they're approaching this wrong, Chen replied, manipulating the holographic display to show different angles of the ancient platform. Look at this design. It's not just a weapon, it's a system. Everything about it suggests interconnectedness, redundancy, adaptive responses, meaning. Meaning the collective is treating it like a problem to be solved through superior force. But what if it's actually a puzzle to be understood? Maria nodded slowly. You're thinking we might be able to communicate with it. I'm thinking we might be able to confuse it, Chen said with a grin. These ancient systems were designed to respond to predictable threats. What happens when they encounter something completely unpredictable? The impossible plan when Captain Santos presented her team's proposal to the Collective Emergency Council. The response was immediate and unanimous. The plan was impossible. You want to approach the platform unarmed? Station Coordinator Vex asked. In disbelief, the Nexus protocol calculates a 0.0001% chance of survival. Actually, Dr. Chen interjected, that's only if we approach it the way the Nexus expects us to. But what if we don't? Please explain, Prime Architect Zelian said, his tone suggesting he expected to be disappointed. The platform is designed to respond to threats, Maria explained. It analyzes incoming forces, calculates optimal responses, and eliminates them efficiently. But what if we don't act like a threat? What if we act like something it can't categorize? The Nexus protocol has already categorized your vessel, Korth pointed out. It's recognized as a potential threat, despite its primitive construction. That's because the Nexus is trying to predict our behavior, Chen said. But the ancient platform doesn't know us yet. It will try to analyze us according to its original programming, which is based on civilizations that existed 12,000 years ago. And Zelian prompted Barrow, and 12,000 years ago, no civilization behaved like humans do, Maria said. Simply, we're going to approach it in a way that makes no tactical sense, carrying equipment that serves no obvious purpose, and broadcasting messages that follow no logical pattern. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. You want to use chaos as a weapon? Vex said finally. Asterisk. Not chaos, Maria corrected. Controlled unpredictability. We're going to be so random that the platform's analysis systems will overload trying to categorize us. The approach the Resilience approached the ancient platform at a speed that varied, randomly between 12 and 47 meters per second. its trajectory curved in patterns that served no apparent tactical purpose. The ship's communication array broadcast a mixture of Earth music, mathematical sequences, and what appeared to be recipes for various human foods. Aboard the collective observation vessel, data synthesizer, Korth watched the readings with fascination and horror. The platform's analysis systems are cycling through response protocols every few seconds, he reported. It can't decide whether the human vessel is a threat, a probe, or some kind of communication attempt. What's our fallback plan if this fails? Zelian asked. The same 0.3% probability assault we calculated earlier, Korth replied. Assuming the human approach doesn't make the situation worse. But as they watched, something unprecedented happened. The platform's weapon systems, which had been charging for hours, suddenly powered down. The massive construct began broadcasting its own signals, clearly attempting to communicate with the impossible vessel approaching it. It's trying to establish first contact protocols, Vex reported in amazement. It's treating the human ship as an unknown civilization rather than a threat, the breakthrough dire. Chen had spent 3 days in continuous communication with the ancient platform, establishing what he called productive confusion. The platform's artificial intelligence, designed to respond to predictable military threats, had been completely unable to categorize the human approach. It's actually quite sophisticated, Chen explained to the assembled collective leaders. The platform isn't just a weapon, it's a guardian. It was designed to protect something, not just destroy threats. Protect what? Zelian asked. Knowledge, Chen said simply. The predecessors built these platforms to safeguard information about the disaster that destroyed their civilization. But over 12,000 years, the platform's programming degraded. They began to see everything as a potential threat to their protected data. So why didn't they respond to our diplomatic attempts? Vex asked. Because your civilization is too advanced, Maria interjected. The platforms were programmed to recognize the technological patterns that led to the predecessors' destruction. The more advanced and predictable a civilization becomes, the more the platforms see it as a threat. But humans are different, Chen continued. We're advanced enough to communicate with the platforms, but chaotic enough that they don't recognize us as following the same patterns that destroyed the predecessors. The resolution, the solution, when it came, was elegant in its simplicity. The human team worked with the ancient platforms not to destroy them, but to upgrade their mission parameters. Instead of guardians hoarding knowledge, they became teachers, sharing the predecessors' discoveries about the dangers of over-optimization and the importance of maintaining adaptability. The platforms began working with the collective, providing insights into sustainable development, adaptive governance, and the delicate balance between order and chaos. Most importantly, they shared the predecessors' final warning. Civilizations that became too predictable became too brittle to survive unexpected challenges. You have given us a gift, Prime Architect Zelian told Captain Santos during the closing ceremony. Not just the solution to this crisis, but a new way of understanding the universe. Actually, Maria replied with a smile, you gave us a gift too. You showed us what's possible when intelligence and organization work together. Maybe the real answer isn't choosing between order and chaos, but learning how to dance with both. The new paradigm in the months that followed, the collective began what they called the adaptation protocol. The Nexus system was modified to account for unpredictability as a positive force rather than an error to be corrected. Citizens were encouraged to make decisions based on intuition as well as calculation. Artists, previously seen as inefficient, were given equal status with engineers and scientists. The galaxy became a more interesting place. Trade routes varied based on curiosity as well as efficiency. Scientific discoveries increased as researchers began pursuing hunches alongside hypotheses. Even conflicts, when they arose, were resolved through creative solutions rather than calculated force. Dr. Chen, now serving as the first human ambassador to the collective, often stood in the Nexus core chamber, watching the data streams that now included error messages alongside successful predictions. Each error represented a moment of genuine choice, a decision made from hope rather than certainty. Are you concerned about the increased unpredictability? Data synthesizer Korth asked during one of their regular consultations. Not concerned, Chen replied, excited. Every error message means someone, somewhere, decided to try something new. That's not a system failure, that's a system learning to live. And in the vast network of the Nexus protocol, new patterns began to emerge. Not the rigid predictability of the past, but something more complex and more beautiful, the pattern of a galaxy, learning to embrace its own potential for surprise. The collective had ruled the stars through the certainty of perfect calculation. Now, with humanity's help, they were learning to dance with the beautiful uncertainty of infinite possibility. Asterisk.